All right. Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. It is August 1st. Nick Morrow, DFS here with Occupy Fantasy, helping you break down tomorrow's UFC card from a betting perspective, as well as from a DFS perspective. We got UFC Vegas 108, Taira versus Park. We were originally supposed to see Taira take on Amir Albazi. Albazi was forced to pull out. In comes Park to take on Taira. Obviously, Taira coming off the first loss of his career. We'll get into the breakdown of that fight in just a minute. A little bit of housekeeping. This card does start at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So definitely keep that in mind, whether you're putting in bets or playing on DraftKings or FanDuel. As always, please like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel. And another thing, guys, please comment on the video as well. Really helps us get this up there in the algorithm. MMA space is a little bit crowded, but it's a very popular sport. So a few extra eyes definitely goes a long way here. Yeah, coming off a really tricky week last week, but the model was on point. Honestly, one of my worst weeks in terms of picking fights, like just who's going to win. I think if you look across the industry, a lot of quote unquote sharp people were kind of in that same boat, but the model did continue to hit. We did have some solid screenshots there in the Discord as well. So just want to quickly plug the slate breakdown, the Occupy model, ownership projections, lineup builder, as low as $7 to get access to some of our premium info. You'll get access to the model, OF index here, kind of showing you the upside of these plays, ownership projections, as well as the daily plug written by Derek Phillips, who I think is back this week after a successful surgery of his own. So yeah, shouts out to Heath being here. Always appreciate you, man. Eagles 1985 as well. Appreciate you. Yeah, so these Apex cards, honestly, they get a lot of crap. Like people like to talk crap. It's like, why are we putting fights in front of nobody? But I don't mind it as long as we're getting fights every single week. And I mean, UFC, say what you will, it's still the premium product when we're comparing it to other promotions. There's a PFL card going on right now, and even some of the lower level UFC fights are more entertaining than a lot of what we're seeing elsewhere. And I'm someone who wants other promotions to do well. It's just the reality of the situation. And DraftKings and FanDuel very much behind the UFC. That's where we're getting our DFS contest as well. So all the more reasons to just be grateful we get fights every week with the UFC. Honestly. But yeah, this card, there's some bangers. Small cage, gonna probably increase the violence rate a little bit. But as always, guys, those of you who aren't familiar, I'm gonna go through fight by fight quickly. It's 8:02 Eastern Standard right now. I'm looking at the clock. I want to keep this well under an hour if I can. But what are you going to get on this show? You're going to get the fight by fight breakdown. I spent a lot of time watching film on most of these fighters. And yeah, I'll be very honest in how confident I am in these picks and these bets, etc. At the end of the show, I will have my best bets, as well as a few long shots. Really looking to bounce back after a terrible week. But we'll talk through last week a little bit when we do get to those bets. And yeah, guys, as always, get your comments in here on the live stream as well as below. We'll always get to everyone the best we can. We should be able to. But yeah, appreciate you being here on a Friday night. Without further ado, let's get into breaking down this card. In the flyweight main event, we do have Suro Taira taking on Hyun Sung Park, as I mentioned before. This was supposed to be Taira Albazi. Albazi, very highly regarded prospect, probably a bit more interesting of a fight, at least when we're looking at the money line. But Taira, 9,200, really solid prospect coming off a loss to Brener Royval, one of the best fighters in the world at 125 pounds. This division's very crowded at the top. I mean, compared to some of the bigger divisions, yeah, just so much talent. And we're seeing it here in a guy like Park coming in to challenge Taira here. 10-0, still very young, actually older than Taira is. Taira obviously being one of the younger fighters to debut in recent years. But yeah, I do like Taira here, if I'm being completely honest. Before I even go into the full breakdown, looking across the books, floating between minus 300, minus 350. I mean, kind of similar to a heavyweight, but for different reasons. This division can be a little bit volatile just because everyone is so skilled. In heavyweight, it's kind of the opposite. Everyone just has so much power. Skill doesn't necessarily matter as much. But again, I think we're going to see more narrow margin fights among this top 15, even when some of the top contenders are competing. That's what we're getting here with Taira again, coming off the loss to Royval. Prior to that, undefeated at 16-0. Yeah, I mean, they've been starving for a prospect out of Japan. They're getting that here with Taira. There's a reason he's main eventing, and they do want to continue to build the stock of this kid. As far as DraftKings goes, I mean, 9,200, pretty reasonably priced in my opinion. He's not one of the top OFNX plays, and there are plays in comparable range that we're going to have to discuss. But he is the most popular play on the slate, is Tatsuro Taira. I'm very interested in him. I do want to have exposure, but where Park is priced at just 7K, if this fight does go long, I do think he's someone who could score well, win or lose. Alvin Hines is the name that always comes up because Brian had a solid FanDuel lineup with him a few weeks ago where he lost but was close to optimal. We see it in some of these women's fights that go 3 rounds. Even the loser, if they're dirt cheap, like we're seeing with Park here, they can do well enough to be viable in a loss. So it becomes a question of, do you think this fight goes the distance or not? Because I am pretty confident in Taira getting it done. I just think he's the better grappler. On the feet, Park, he's going to be putting out more volume. But the way Taira fights at range, I think it's going to be difficult for Park to really kind of find his timing on short notice. Again, he took this fight on about a week's notice. Um, so yeah, again, I'm all over Taira here. I do think in DFS, I probably wouldn't stack it too aggressively unless you're playing low risk contests. But Park is the type of fighter. If this fight goes long, he's capable of getting takedowns of his own. He's a high volume striker. He can score really well. So I don't want to totally overlook him. But I am pretty confident in Taira here, coming off a full camp for a really tough opponent, Amir Albazi, also coming off a loss, a fight that he didn't look bad in, but certainly a fight you have to assume he learned a lot of lessons in. So again, Taira here, someone I'm going to be pretty heavy on. I think he does get it done in the main event. As far as getting it done inside the distance, I actually think Taira does probably eventually find a submission. Probably. At the same time, Park is athletic. He is young. We haven't really seen him extended into the 5th round much, though. I do want to see what his cardio looks like if there's a lot of scrambling here. And yeah, again, fight on short notice usually doesn't favor your cardio. Even at sea level in the apex. So don't need to think too much about elevation here, but you do need to think about a guy who was training for a 3-round fight, taking a 5-round fight, probably before he was peaking for the 3-round camp on just a week's notice. So again, don't want to spend too much time on any individual fight. Again, trying to make decent timing here. But Taira, really solid play. Also keep in mind he is one of the more popular plays on the entire slate. Just a couple more stats. I mean, Taira is going to have a 4-inch reach advantage, even if Park's a little bit better of a boxer. Like I said, I think the distance striking for Taira is going to make a difference here. And again, I think Park's a good wrestler. Taira's fine being taken down, though, really solid off his back and sweeps, scramble, etc. We've seen it in most of his fights. Just someone, I think is a little bit better right now. And Park is a fun prospect, but I'm getting redundant on this one. Let's go to the next fight here, the co-main event. Pretty fun matchup between former teammates. We have Mateusz Rebecki against Chris Duncan. These guys both fight out of ATT in Florida. Mind you, ATT is a massive, massive gym. So even if your teammates, you might not necessarily train with each other. These guys did train each other pretty extensively at the same time. Sounds like they're kind of in different cliques down there at that gym. No bad blood or anything, but yeah, they're teammates and they're fighting. So I guess that's notable. Rebecki coming off that absolutely ridiculous performance against Middlebeck Oral Bio fighter. A lot of people have very high in terms of his career trajectory. Yeah, kind of came out a little bit slow. Then as that fight wore on, really destroyed Oral By to the point that a lot of people thought there could have been a doctor's stoppage in that one. Had the knockdown, was landing plenty of strikes, doing a really good job on the mat as well, whether it was defensively or offensively, is Rebecki. And Rebecki's kind of small for the division, which is significant in this matchup. Duncan's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage, but Duncan, he has had kind of mixed results against Southpaws, and that's what he's going to be facing here. Again, these guys are training partners, though. That can go one of two ways. Sometimes, if they're really good friends, it just turns into a really boring sparring match. I think there's enough on the line here that that's not what we're going to see. Chris Duncan, too, coming off 3 fights that did not go the distance, 2 wins via sub, last time out over Jordan Vucenic. Fight that I wasn't super heavy on him, but he did catch that guillotine. Maybe the envy of his teammate Dustin Poirier, who we just saw retire. But yeah, it's kind of tricky here. I do think point per dollar, Duncan, to me, is someone worth considering. His upside at his price is tough to beat. When he does win, it's usually by kind of opportunistic submission, something like that. But I do think Rebecki is just a better fighter here. I think more likely than not, he's going to get it done. When you're looking across the books right now, minus 200 at some places. A lot of minus 210s, not quite minus 200. But if this does go below minus 200, I really do like the Rebecki money line. I actually think this fight probably finishes inside the distance either way, whether it's Rebecki finding a KO or Duncan maybe finding that opportunistic submission or attritionally finding a late finish, similar to what we saw when Rebecki took on Ferreira. Came out great in that fight, was having a ton of success, but kind of gassed himself out. Maybe a little bit like what we saw to Whitaker last week, where he had a great moment where he knocked down the Ritter, almost finished him, but it pretty much gassed him out, kind of cost him that fight. Similar situation with Rebecki and Diego Ferreira, who is a tough out, but that is a fight I think he should have won. And if this was just a full win streak that losses in there, I think we're talking about an even wider line. I think there actually could be some value on Rebecki here. I do want to include the caveat that I've never been super high on Chris Duncan. I've kind of always thought he was a little bit overrated, but he's continued to prove me wrong. And I will say, since he's gone to ATT, seeing major improvements in his game, especially grappling both offensively and defensively. But the one thing with him, I question his durability. So that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on here. I favor Rebecki. I think it's going to be competitive early. But as this line closes, I'm actually pretty comfortable laying the money line juice on the favorite. Again, these guys are teammates. Anything can happen here. A little bit of strange nuance with that dynamic, but I do really like Rebecki. Rebecki is one of the more popular fighters on the slate. 35% over on DK. I'll run through a few FanDuel ownerships a little bit later, but guys, definitely check out the links. Just get access to the model. It's so cheap. Really, really helps you build. We also have the multi-lineup builder as well for those who are looking to do some MME. UFC, a great sport for that, certainly. We saw some really interesting lineups climbing up leaderboards last week. Would have been tough to get to those unless you were using something like our lineup builder. But yeah, I like Rebecki here. I think Duncan is a little bit disrespected by the public, but on the line this week, I'm a little bit surprised this line isn't a little bit wider. So I'm on Rebecki. I think he gets it done. Just a better boxer, very crisp. Duncan's been finding a ton of success via submissions. I just think Rebecki has kind of the anti-grappling to find success here, similar to what we saw out of him against Orobai. As long as the cardio holds up, I do think he's the side. So if you're heavy on Rebecki, maybe you're tying him into parlays, you can hedge maybe with a late Duncan finish, round 2-3, maybe round 3, something like that. But I do like Rebecki here. I think he gets it done. Another really fun fight in the feature bout. We got Elvis Brener taking on Estevam Ribovics. Just pulling up some statistics here on my other monitor. But yeah, I mean, Ribovics, really talented boxer, kind of stands there a little bit, kind of a flat stance, but a guy who lands over 8 significant strikes per minute. And he's got a pretty decent sample size. I mean, we're talking about 5 fights. Usually, when we're talking about numbers like that, it's a guy who had a KO in the first round or something crazy like that. But to have that many significant strikes landed per minute across 5 or 6 fights in the UFC is just ridiculous. I'll go ahead and pull him up here. But Ribovics, guy who's going to score well for you in DFS. FanDuel as well, where you get more points for significant strikes. But yeah, I mean, probably need the finish here to hit value. I do think we could maybe find it. Brener is someone who has been finished historically. Brener here, if he's smart, he's going to try to lean on his grappling. I just don't know that he has the cardio to do so for 3 rounds. So I am a little bit concerned about the first round. I do think Brener is going to be dangerous early, especially if he can take this fight to the mat. I do think he has the wrestling ability to maybe get it there. But Ribovics is very much a sprawl and brawl, kind of stay on your feet as much as possible type of fighter. Seems to have decent grappling ability, 63% takedown defense so far in the UFC. But yeah, I think Brener has a path to victory. I just don't know that he can exercise it for 15 minutes. We've seen him fade a little bit at times. We've seen him rocked in a lot of his fights. But I do think Ribovics hits harder than a few of his recent opponents. So I am on the Ribovics side here. This should be a really fun fight, though. Brener is a tough kid. He's going to come out super, super aggressive as well. So I do think there is some viability to using him with DFS, just kind of hoping for that early finish. But I also think that Ribovics and his ridiculous striking volume makes him a pretty appealing play here as well. Quickly looking at the money line, minus 250, minus 270. All the way up to minus 280, depending on what book you're looking at. I do think Ribovics is the rightful favorite. I think they wanted him to get it done here, but it's going to get a little ugly early, I imagine. So I'm on Ribovics. I do believe I have him included in bet later on. We'll get to those at the end of the video. But for anyone just tuning in right now, please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Again, leave comments in the description below. I talked with Brian about maybe doing like a week giveaway, like where you get access to the MMA stuff if we're doing like guessing significant strikes or some sort of, I don't know, pool in the bottom in the comments. We haven't implemented that yet, but guys, the comments really do help us get this in front of more eyes. It tells everyone that we want to get more free content like this out to you on a regular basis. So again, really appreciate you being here, but make your presence felt. It's definitely appreciated. But again, just to kind of quickly recap that fight, I do think it's going to be violent. I do think Brener's live early, but as it wears on, Ribovics' superior striking and ability to keep things standing should shine through. I do think even if he's taken down early, he should be able to work his way back to his feet. Another somewhat interesting fight here. We got Nora Cornolle taking on Carol Rosa. Um, yeah, I'll start with Rosa. I like Rosa. I think she's a fun fighter, but she really burnt me last time out against Eileen Perez. I don't rate Eileen Perez. She has such a clear game plan in all of her fights, try to take her opponent down and just kind of hang on top of her. Rosa just didn't look urgent at all. I do think she won the third round of that fight, but I thought she'd be able to kind of keep things standing. She looked kind of out of it that night, and I didn't really catch her in many interviews this week. Maybe I will after the fact here. But yeah, I was super disappointed by that Eileen Perez performance because when Rosa's at her best, 6.2 significant strikes landed per minute. Also averages over a takedown per 15 minutes. Solid takedown defense, floating around 70%. And that's even after that Eileen Perez disaster, I'll call it. But yeah, I think she's the better fighter here. She's been taking on better competition. At the same time, I will say Nora Cornolle is certainly one of the live underdogs on this card if you're dog hunting for DFS or otherwise. She's got a mean streak. I don't think she's nearly as talented as Carol. I think she could try to go to the grappling here. She's probably not going to be able to find it the same way she did against the Haley Cohen, someone who I don't rate highly at all. And on the feed, I do think that she takes too much damage in exchanges. Really low volume from her too, to 3 significant strikes per minute. Carol averages double that. And Cornolle kind of heavy on her feet. I think we saw Rosa in her fight against Penny Kianzad, I think it was, really lead on the leg kicks, and that was her last win. I'm hoping that her corner and her team has her kind of going back to the well because I do think she's the better fighter here. Looking at the money line, I don't hate paying around minus 184. It's getting a little bit inflated now. It is women's MMA. You don't want to pay a premium for any favorite. I don't know that we are, though. I think there's a little bit of recency bias baked in here after that terrible Rosa performance against Eileen Perez. At the same time, she is kind of getting up there in age. But yeah, it's interesting. Cornolle, kind of the rising prospect, right? She's actually 5 years older than Carol Rosa. So just another reason I do slightly prefer Rosa here. At 8,600 on DK, I think she's viable. Not something I'd be prioritizing, but if you're trying to build a lineup of all winners, like you can't really get to much of an IK range. Maybe this is something you try to exercise. I do think there's enough live underdogs on this card, though, that maybe you don't want to play too much Cal Rosa, but I do imagine she's going to be low on Cornolle. Certainly a live underdog, probably draws some ownership just for that reason alone. But I'm on the Rosa side. I just think she's the better fighter. Do I trust her enough to put a bet on her on the money line around minus 200? Probably not, but it's a line I'm keeping an eye on, and I do feel pretty confident she gets it done. It's just, even by decision, I don't think you're getting much value on her there. There is a world where maybe she finds a KO via leg kick, something like that. But almost always we're going to think this fight goes the distance. But I just think right back to that Rebus, what's her name, Baby Shark, Ricci fight a couple weeks ago where Ricci found the KO. I don't think many were expecting that there. That fight was like minus 600 to go the distance, something ridiculous. So, yeah, never know what we're going to see in this sport. So lean into the variance, mix in your underdogs. Another interesting underdog here, we have Neil Magny taking on Elizu Zaleski dos Santos. These are two fighters who are certainly far past their respective primes. Starting with Magny, I will say he's been taking on the better competition, but he's been really struggling against said competition. I mean, losing to Practice Morales, he had that awesome comeback against Mike Malott, but he was completely dominated in that fight until he was able to just take over because Malott, similarly to Rebecki against Ferrara, similarly to Whitaker against the Ritter, gassed himself out. But yeah, I mean, Magny has looked terrible. At the same time, you do have to consider who he's been taking on. Protest ranked Morales, future title contender, angling for a Leon Edwards matchup right now. So it's tough to get too hard on him. And then we look at Zaleski to Santos, and it's interesting. I actually think he's not as washed. At the same time, that KO loss to Chidi, not aging well after the Jake Matthews loss. Not that that's even close to similarly stylistically, but Owen or Scroggin can't put much weight into that. I do think he was competitive enough in the Fakradinov and Brown fights, though, that I think he's probably the side here. I will say I don't want to pay much juice on him on the money line, but minus 180 feels about right. At the same time, Neil has kind of made a career of coming through as an underdog. I just think he's further past his prime than Zaleski is. I will kind of plug that we're going to do some best bets at the end of the show. I think I have Zaleski by decision, but we'll double check on that in just a bit. But he's the side for me, but I will say this. Magny, one of the better underdogs on this card, just because I think he has winning upside. Doesn't always score well. 87 points in that Malott fight. Again, he had the KO in the third round. He had the sub against D-Rod. That's aging incredibly well, where he scored over 100 points. But yeah, I mean, who's to say Zaleski's chin isn't gone after the Chidi fight? Or if Zaleski gasses himself out, like he almost did against Brown and Fakradinov, I do think Magny could come through. So Magny is someone you should be considering. My pick is Zaleski, probably by decision, but it's not a pick I'm at all confident in. Going to have to pull up the graphic here for this next fight. We got Kevin Vallejos taking on Danny Silva. Highest projected ownership, Vallejos 31%. And yeah, this is a fight I think a lot of people have circled. Vallejos kind of becoming a fan favorite because he chirps a lot on Twitter. I like the kid. I really like his boxing. I mean, he's more famous for his loss against Gene Silva on Contender Series than he really is for any of his wins. And at the same time, I do think Danny Silva is a little bit disrespected this week, if we're being completely honest. Vallejos around minus 400, minus 500, depending on what book you're looking at, which puts Silva around minus 3 something. I don't know. I do think Vallejos is the side. I do understand he's the rightful favorite. I think he's the better technical boxer of the two. But Danny does have sneaky grappling upside here, in my opinion. I don't know if it's part of his game he's going to lean on, but averaging over 2 takedowns in the UFC per 15 minutes. And yeah, I mean, he lands just as much volume as Vallejos. Everyone wants to talk about the crazy volume, the crazy body work, everything we see great out of Kevin. But Silva has a lot of the same attributes, and he's going to be the longer fighter here. Just a 2-inch listed reach advantage. I think that's probably inaccurate. 4 inches in height for Danny Silva as far as the tangible measurements go. But when it comes to intangibles, Vallejos is extremely confident to the point that I can see him walking Silva down, maybe finding a finish. I do think he's the rightful side. The body work, too, against a guy like Silva who is really durable could be the difference here. But yeah, if you're looking at money lines this week, I mean, it might make sense to maybe throw a little bit on Silva. I also think he kind of fits that mold of like one of these fighters that can score well even in a loss. I'm never going to really recommend stacking 3-round fights, but this does feel a little bit similar to Royval and Van, which was a fight that was famously worth stacking a few cards ago. But yeah, I mean, Silva scoring pretty well, even in decision wins. He's just so damn cheap at 6,800. If this goes the distance, we're getting mostly favorites. He has 50 or 60 fantasy points a la Alvin Hines. He could be someone you're going to want in your lineups. And again, I do think Vallejos has the upside to warrant playing him at his expensive price tag. I just think it's a little bit riskier than some of the other wide money line fights. And we're seeing this more and more, right? Like, wider lines, these lines are out earlier, the market's getting sharper. They don't like people kind of just parlaying all these favorites together. So yeah, things are getting overinflated. I think that's what we're seeing here. I do like Vallejos. He is the rightful favorite, but I think Silva's worth mixing in or at least considering a little bit. I think that fight's definitely closer than maybe the line's going to suggest. Kind of similar to Carol Rosa. Kind of pissed off about Rinya Nakamura. I don't think I'm alone at all in that one. Last time out against Gafarov, heavy favorite, inflated favorite, but really didn't perform to his top ability. And Rinya Hybrid, his famous nickname here, right? I don't know how famous that nickname is. But it's because he's supposed to be able to do it all. And this guy has a great wrestling background, really effective grappler. Didn't really choose to grapple at all against Gafarov until that third round, which was extremely frustrating to see because he was getting picked up apart on the feet a bit. He gets a pretty nice bounce back spot here against the fighter in Nathan Fletcher. Trains out of that Paddy Pimblett camp over in the UK. Well-rounded guy. Does kind of have the opportunistic submission ability that Pimblett does. Not quite on the same level, but that is kind of a similar style for him. Not great on the feet. I mean, 3.4 significant strikes landed per minute. Only absorbing 1.7. That's against Ramoska and Lofgren, so you can't put too much into that. But he's the guy who does tend to look to grapple. I think that's going to be difficult for him here against someone like Rinya. He's going to be jumping guillotine. Rinya does have the ability to kind of work out of that with relative ease, knock on wood. So I do think Rinny is the side here. Rinny, a guy who averages 2.6 takedowns per 15 minutes, even after that terrible calf rod performance. So someone who could score well in DFS, regardless of whether or not he's finding the finish. I do think he's the side, but kind of similar to the Vallejos fight. I think the line has gotten a little bit out of hand. Minus 400 now, if you're looking across the books here. My bookie has a minus 370. But even that feels a little wide. Again, just because Minion doesn't necessarily have the best fight IQ. You would think after that last performance he's going to correct that flaw, but it's tough to ever expect anything from anyone in this game. So I do like Rainier. I do think he's the side. I would rather have him in DFS. Just proceed with some caution if you're trying to parlay him on that money line. Let's take a quick look at chat here, see what else we got going. Um, yeah, Magny definitely helped with some cash against Malott. I mean, that fight was all survive and advance, right? Malott did everything right, except he was over aggressive and tired himself out. That was huge. I maybe could see the same here from Zaleski. It's just Zaleski is a vet. He kind of knows what he has to do. I think he has a better fight IQ than what we saw out of Malott there, but definitely something that wouldn't shock me to see again. Again, I do think Magny is one of the more appealing underdogs. Speaking of appealing underdogs, I don't know if this is one we got Tresean Gore taking on Rodolfo Vieira. So Tresean missed this weight here by I think 3 pounds, but it seems like maybe he did on purpose. He looked fine on the scales. He was like, "Sorry guys, I did my best." Didn't seem sucked down at all. At face-offs, his body looked fine, but at the same time, it's funny. He missed weight, but he's still outsized here by a guy in Rodolfo Vieira, known for his submission grappling. We were comparing Bunes last week to Vieira. That was a little bit premature, obviously, with Boudet getting that fight won as a heavy underdog. But Vieira, I mean, he's up there in age. He said himself he doesn't love fighting. He's a jiu-jitsu guy, super credentialed, can sub almost anyone when his fights get to the mat. But when he's not finding that success, he struggles. Coming off a loss to a guy in Andre Petrosky, who I don't think is anywhere near his level in terms of technical skill. But it kind of just shows you that Vieira is a little bit past his prime. Fortunately for him, he is getting a matchup here against Gore that I think is very winnable. Tresean Gore, athletic kid, has a good head on his shoulders for the most part. He didn't come in too cocky into the promotion, but after a few losses now, it seems like he's kind of figuring things out. He was KO'd last time out against Tulio. Gave a decent showing, though. I mean, he rocked Tulio a few times as a massive, massive underdog. At the same time, I mean, it's a question of if he can keep this fight standing or if he can outlast Vieira, similarly to what we were talking about with Magny and Malott. Gore has an 83% said takedown defense in the UFC. Vieira does average 3.5 takedowns per 15 minutes, though. But yeah, I just think in terms of levels, if half of the Vieira shows up that he's capable of being, I think he should be able to run through Gore here, just take him down, probably submit him on the mat. Pulling up. Yeah, I believe Gore's been submitted before. I wanted to double check this, but just 5-3. I mean, not one of the better records you're ever going to see. Obviously, no losses via submission, but I don't know. Who is he taking on that is really going to be chasing that type of game? I mean, he's been pretty good defensively grappling, but he's kind of in a different spot here, and I don't really think his striking ability is on Vieira's level. He has the power to end this fight in an instant, though, so he is worth including in your DFS builds. But Vieira, one of my favorite plays on the slate. I'm pretty sure the model's agreeing. Yep. Top OF index play, ranking third only behind Estevam and Bashi with a 115 score. And he's much cheaper too, 8,900 on DK, 18 on FanDuel. Maybe somebody you want to be pretty heavy on in your exposures. Definitely somebody you also want to hedge a little bit though, because if Gore does win, it's probably via finish. But it's either early or it's after kind of racking up some points and finding it late. So I do like Vieira here. I think he gets it done. I just think the grappling is that much better. I don't think there's a gap in striking as wide as we usually need to see for Vieira to kind of fail. But yeah, I do think he gets it done. And yeah, that fight against Petrosky, as bad as it was, I just think Petrosky is the better defensive grappler compared to Tresean. I think, again, coming off a loss, that's usually a good thing for some of these guys. They try to make corrections, but Vieira is getting up there in age, so maybe he's just over it. But yeah, I think he's my age. This guy is 37, so proceed with caution. But yeah, I think the model knows what it's doing here when it talks about how he's one of the best plays. And really low level kind of fight when you talk about the Tresean Gore side. And then I'm going to kind of use that as a segue here to another really low level fight. Relatively speaking, it's still the UFC. No disrespect to anyone who could break in. But Nick Klein against Andre Pulyaev here. I don't know. There's not a ton I can say great about either of these guys. You watch the regional tape; they kind of do what they should against mediocre to terrible competition. Klein got kind of steamrolled in his debut. Pulyaev did well to survive, but he got steamrolled in his debut. So yeah, I don't know what to expect here. Who shows up and wants it more, I guess, is kind of the question. But this is really the bottom half of the middleweight division, in my opinion. I don't think these guys have many wins on the roster over many fighters that are on the roster. But yeah, looking at statistics, we're not really pulling for much. But Klein is a submission grappler. He's going to be looking to get his grappling going. Pulyaev, 85% takedown defense so far in the UFC. But if Klein's not fighting those takedowns, it seems like he's willing to give up. I do think Pulyev's striking ability here is going to be dramatically better, but with it being the small cage, I do understand why the line's close. But yeah, I think more likely than not, we see Pulyaev kind of survive a scary first round. Maybe it's a good spot, to live bet him. And after that, I just think the striking ability is going to allow him to kind of pull away, probably finish Klein. I think there's some unders here we're going to talk about when we get to the best bets. But again, low level matchup, you can never have too much confidence on either side. We saw a little bit of that last week. I don't think anyone should be too confident on either of these fighters here, but they do have finishing potential, so definitely worth getting exposure. But yeah, tough to trust. If there's someone you could trust this week, maybe it is Austin Bashi. Um, Taking on a late notice opponent in John Yannis, up to a minus 700, minus 800 favorite. I'll be 100% transparent. I think Bashi's a little bit overrated. Okay. I thought against Francis Marshall would have been a really fun matchup that Marshall could have been live in if he was a heavy underdog. When they remade this fight against John Yannis, I wanted to find reasons to like Yannis. Yannis, I think, might be the slightly better striker here, but it's not really going to matter. His takedown defense is absolutely terrible. All his interviews, all he ever talks about is takedown defense because it is such an issue. You can tell it's in his head. And most of his opponents take him down. Yannis last time out against Nick Gary, a guy who really struggled in the UFC. He's already been cut. Lost to Rebecki, who's on this card. Got dominated by Chase Hooper, I believe. Before Hooper was who he is now. Yeah, I mean, he was taking Yannis down repeatedly. That was a 5 round fight. Gary did eventually fade, and Yannis was able to find a KO. But I think Bashi's ready here. Again, Yannis taking this fight on short notice. Bashi was ready for a full camp against a much tougher opponent. And yeah, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to once again plug the plug. Shouts out to Eric Phillips. We get a little excerpt here. A reminder of Bashi's profile and DFS upside. This was from an excerpt in his UFC debut. So, of the 55 minutes he's fought in his previous 6 fight, he attempted 48 takedowns and controlled his opponents for nearly 39 of those 55 minutes. With the right opponent, he has 10 plus takedown upside, in addition to constantly looking for submissions and ground and pound when on the mat. So, he's kind of the best of both worlds, right? I think against an opponent like Giannis, you have that early finish upside. I think you can take him down, get his back, choke him out. But if he doesn't, and I will say this, Giannis is tough. Um, I think he's going to rinse and repeat. Like it's kind of a Marab situation, not to compare the two in terms of overall ability, but the style of fight that they try to execute is definitely the same. Bashi's going to be looking for takedowns. He's going to be relentless, and he rates only second in the model behind Estevam. Definitely someone we want to get heavy exposure to this week. He is going to be extremely popular, though. 35% owned right now on DraftKings when we're projecting that ownership. But yeah, someone you want to be involved with. Like I said, I think Giannis is someone who's tough. I think he's a better striker, but it's hard to score well when you're on your back. So even though he's dirt cheap, even though I think there are wins for him on this roster against guys who are just going to strike, I don't think that's what we're seeing here. I think Bashi gets it done pretty easily. But yeah, the money line is a little bit silly. So there is some Bashi inside the distance prices that I do like. We'll get to those in just a minute. Make an amazing time today, guys. I did want to make a point to kind of shorten these videos for you. I know some people listen to me in 2x speed, so I'm just trying to talk in 2x speed this week to kind of hopefully fix that. But yeah, talking about the top plays of the model, we got Rafael Esteban here taking on Felipe Bunes. Esteban coming off 2 decision wins, really aging well. The win over Charles Johnson last time out against Aguilar looked pretty good there as well. Fight I thought he'd be able to find a finish in, but he didn't. So kind of left me hanging there somewhere to Orinia. But yeah, Esteban looking at the model here. 132 OF index. He is very expensive, but kind of similar to Bashi. This is a guy who's going to be pursuing takedowns relentlessly. Bashi, what did I say? Let's pull up the stats real quick on him. I know we're on to the next fight. I just want to compare the two. I think for DFS it matters. Um, But yeah, Bashi's averaging over 8 takedowns per 15 minutes over 2 fights, UFC Contender Series. Estevam is at 6.4. So I do think Bashi's my preferred play of the two, but keep an eye on ownership. I think they're both popular right now. The model actually prefers Estevam right now, which is a little bit surprising to me. Um, but yeah, he's much lower owned. He's not even rating as one of the top owned plays. So if you want to get different, maybe playing some Estevam over Bashi's a good thing. Going to be very difficult to fit them together on either site this week. I do like Bashi if I'm only picking one, but as a way to get different, Estevam certainly has a path. To speak of his opponent a little bit, though, I don't want to completely overlook Felipe Bunes. Really good submission grappler, works well off his back, a little bit too comfortable off his back, though, which I think is going to spell trouble for him here. Um, would I be shocked if he found an opportunistic submission? A little bit, because I do think Estevam is the better overall grappler, certainly the better wrestler. But yeah, Bunes does kind of have a knack for finding finishes if there is a even small window presented to him to do so. Let's take a quick look here. Let's see here. Yeah, Estevam, 3 of his 13 wins coming via submission. And then Bunes notably has 7 professional losses already, 14-7, like 35 years old. I don't think the UFC is looking to build this guy much. And as good as his offensive grappling is, he actually has 2 losses via submission, obviously. The one at Juicier Formiga and LFA. Insane they even made that fight. That was after Formiga was cut by the UFC, I believe. Really, really good grappler. But yeah, I think Estevam probably gets it done here, probably scores pretty well. Again, I prefer to play Bashi, but if the ownership gap is wide enough, definitely check out the model the day of the fights. Definitely a decent place to maybe pivot. But yeah, the concern here in playing the heavy juice on him, though, is that he does seem to gas. So I don't know. Bunes late. If it seems like Esteban's starting to fade, your book allows live betting. Something to keep an eye on. I do think Bunes is the better cardio. I just think Esteban, in terms of skill, both on the feet and on the mat, is the much better fighter. Not a ton of underdogs that I'm really touting heavily this week. I will say Ketlin Souza is one worth considering. Coming off a loss to Angela Hill, narrow split decision. I don't know how narrow it was rewatching the fight, but she did land 77 significant strikes against a pretty good defensive striker in Angela Hill. Scored around 30 fantasy points. She does kind of fit that mold of someone who could do all right in a loss. But she's thinking on Piera Rodriguez here. Um, who's had kind of mixed results. I mean, she was dominating Cornolle before she headbutted her, finished there, submitted by Jillian Robertson. Can't get on her for that. Did look great last time out against Knudsen, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know. I think these two are a little bit closer in skill than what we're seeing on the money line. I do prefer the Piera Rodriguez side. I think she's probably going to get it done via decision. But again, on a card where not a lot of underdogs feel good, a lot of opener underdogs have come through this year. A lot of women's underdogs have come through this year. If you're just kind of looking at data that way, I do think Souza's live. But Piera is kind of the more aggressive of the two. I think she kind of has that mean streak in her. I think she's stronger. I think she should be able to bully Souza a little bit here. Averages 4 takedowns per 15 minutes. Souza just a 64% takedown defense. I think if she can get her grappling going, that's going to be able to separate her. Even if rounds are close on the striking, I think she could kind of record those late takedowns to kind of take over those rounds and steal them from the judges if they are close. So I do like the Rodriguez side. At the same time, I can't say I'm confident. Sousa's been pretty impressive, honestly. Definitely outperforming what I expected of her. The win over Jeremy, obviously, hasn't aged as well as maybe some thought it would, but the loss to Hill actually did see a pretty good version of Ketlin Souza there. So, and again, another fight where it seems like Pierre is kind of the up and comer. She's actually the older fighter, a little bit surprising. So definitely keep that in mind. Let's take a quick look at chat here. Hey, Samuel Campana, appreciate you tuning in. Is there salary rules when doing lineup construction based on salary? I guess you're wondering, like, to leave money on the table. On a week like this, where there's not a lot of underdogs, where there's fewer fights with only 12, some cards we see 14, I am comfortable leaving salary on the table. At the same time, it's tough for me to say that there's, like, a major rule I'd be setting on this particular card. I will say if you're leaving up to 1K in salary and you like all your plays, I wouldn't be totally against it. I do think some of these 9K guys are overpriced. Like, I don't know. If Vallejos, again, on the money line, I think they're a little bit overpriced. So who's to say they aren't in DFS as well? Bashi, Estevam look excellent the model, though. And Taira in the 5 round main event with finishing upside. Tough to get away from him. Ribovics. But yeah, some of these others, I mean, if you're going to the mid range a bit more or you're going to some of the value, don't mind leaving salary on the table. Same over on FanDuel, same deal. But yeah, I just don't think there's a certain exact rule I'd be setting. But the fewer fights, the more I am comfortable leaving salary as a means to get different, because fewer fights means it's just a little bit more difficult to get different. Again, guys, if you do have any questions, comments, feel free to get them in. Even after this video, if you're not watching it live, please comment below. Like, let me know your favorite picks this week, any bets that you're going to be on, any fights you're excited for. Always happy to kind of chop it up with you there, or even easier, get access to the Discord and chop it up behind the paywall. Definitely appreciate everyone. But yeah, just to kind of recap here, top plays in the model right now: Estevam, Bashi, Vieira. No surprises. Ownership: Park, Vallejos, Rebecki, Bashi, Taira. That main event's going to be in about looks like 80% of lineup. So maybe not playing the main event's a way to get different. Personally, I will have a lot of Taira. And then before we do this week's best bets, I do just want to kind of go over last week. Whitaker by finish didn't happen. Whitaker moneyline didn't happen. He gas himself out, in my opinion. He's certainly a little bit further past his prime than I expected. But yeah, I thought that was a fight he should have finished. Carlos Leal, I had inside the distance. He got sparked. 0-4. I'm trying to remember the fourth bet, but honestly, it's better to just keep moving on. And like I said, I want to be transparent here. I'm not going to win every week. Last week was brutal, I think, for a lot of sharp people. Not to call myself sharp, but just listening to some of my friends across the industry, it seems like that has kind of been the case. And yeah, overall, we're going to see a winning record again. This is the third or fourth week we've been doing this. So let's get into this week's plays. I like Bashi by KO or submission. Again, when we see such a massive favorite, minus 1,000, you got to ask yourself, how do they pay off that price tag where they're winning the fight 90+% of the time? I think it's by finding a finish. So we're getting a price on that just around minus 160 on DK right now. I just think that's value. I think Bashi gets it done inside. On DK, they have these kind of mini fight parlays, they call them. If you're looking for these bets, you go to the fight, look for fight parlay. It's already built. But I like Ribovics to win in over 1.5. I do think Brener is going to come out grappling, make the first round close. I also think he's tough enough to get through that first round pretty easily. I mean, we've seen Ribovics with some early finishes, so I'm not super confident. I just think there's much more value in playing him with the over 1.5 than there is just playing him super juiced on the money line. And then another one I got here: Rebecki versus Duncan under 2.5. I question Duncan's durability. At the same time, his clearest path to victory is probably via timely submission. So I like the under 2.5 there. Then Taira by KO submission. I just think he's going to outclass Park with this fight being on short notice. 5 rounds. I mean, to say Park's going to have the cardio to do so, we haven't seen it before. So very much from the school of show me, then I'll believe you. This one's tricky. These are long shots. I mean, sprinkle on these. Again, I don't want to say I have a ton of confidence on any of them. At the same time, I do think there's a little bit of value. These are probably bets I'd be placing. Estevam by KO. I mean, he's got the submission in his bag, but he's taking on a guy in Bunes who's really, really advanced jiu-jitsu. I think he can knock him out, whether by ground and pound or on the feet. I think 215 for that is pretty decent value. Pulyaev by KO. I think if he wins, it probably does come via KO. I don't want to pay minus 150 for him, so I'll just take the plus 185. Hope he can survive a few grappling exchanges with Klein and then knock him out from there. And then Zaleski by decision. Again, I don't want to be paying minus 180 for the juice, so let's flip that to a plus. And yeah, Magny's durable. I mean, he went the distance against the likes of Gary, a few others, a lot. Obviously, we saw him survive there, and Zaleski's kind of way past his prime compared to those guys. So I do think by decisions where we're finding value there. And then Austin Bashi to win a round 2. If you look at his finishes, I think most of those have come in round 2. I think this Yannis kid's tough. I just don't think he's going to be able to weather it for 15 minutes, but maybe he will for 5. So plus 300 and maybe chase that round 2. To me, that's something I have a little bit of interest in. To wrap up the show, guys, I will do a quick recap of everything. But first, let's do a quick build on both sites. And yeah, I want to say I like Bashi. I like Taira. Those are my 2 favorite pay-ups this week. But in order to fit them, we're going to have to do some dog hunting, and it gets a little bit tricky, right? So, I mean, Magny's one that we're going to consider. I think Ketlin Souza and Nola Cornolle are 2 that I have a little bit of interest in. But yeah, this is a little crazy. I do think Danny Silva, win or lose at 6,800, is someone I want exposure to. Maybe Vallejos is who he thinks he is. He comes and knocks him out. But I think people are disrespecting Silva's striking ability a little bit. And that allows us to not have to go too much, do too much more dumpster diving in terms of building a lineup that we're trying to jam Taira with Bashi. And Park is going to be more popular than Silva. I think in a loss, Silva probably outscores Park, even if his 3-round fight goes decision compared to Park's going 5. we got to see. I mean, that's not something we've seen before, but to me, I do like Silva a lot here. Even if I think Vallejos wins the fight, I think Silva is value, especially on DK. I mentioned Pulyaev. I think he has a pretty good win condition, maybe by KO. Then it gets tricky, right? I think we have to pick one of Souza or Magny. I don't know. I guess I'll go Magny. And then we're on like Rosa, which I don't love at all. But yeah, I mean, she can land the types of strikes she was against Aldana. No salary on the table. But as a first build, really just kind of talking through it quickly, I don't mind that at all. Let's get a little bit different over here. Estevam actually outscoring Bashi in the model. Maybe we try him a captain on FanDuel. He won't be nearly as popular. Let's see who's going to be underpriced over here. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of tricky. We got Park for cheap. Yannis is cheap. I do like Silva over here for the price, same kind of philosophy. I don't want to play the same on both though. Like I said, I think I don't know if Fletcher can survive for 3 rounds. Maybe he's someone at $10 you have interest in. Um, I don't know. I guess I'll go with Fletcher. I do think Riddy is much better, but if he's not going to wrestle for 3 rounds, it's going to be close. Uh, Gore has the upside though. Let's go with Gore. He's risky. Vieira is actually one of my favorite plays, but hunting for a dog with a ceiling, if you're playing this octagon, trying to come in first place, something like Gore does make a lot of sense. To get different, I think we're going to have to go with another underdog or two. We went Pulyaev in the other one. Super low level fight. I do think Pulyaev by KO is a bet I'll be making, but to get Klein in here as a dog, I don't mind that at all. Uh, I don't want to play VR because we already have Gore. I do think VR point per dollar is excellent. I like Rebecki. I like Ribovics. What does that leave us? Souza or Magny? What do we go with on the other one? Magny? Yeah, let's go with Souza here. Something like this. And again, not leaving salary on the table, so take that with a grain of salt. But really do appreciate you all tuning in here, guys. Let's check chat here. Yeah, Eagle, appreciate you, man. Good luck tomorrow. Like I said, guys, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're not already a member, check it out if you got a few extra bucks. It costs like, I don't know, a sub, a couple coffees, whatever you do, a pack of cigarettes, all less than all of that, honestly. Or like if you rent the movie off Netflix or whatever, $7 gets you access to the model. I think it gets you with the Discord as well. We're always making updates, talking through things. I mean, we got a lot of sharp minds in there right now for UFC. Always chopping it up, kind of comparing notes and things like that. It's just a good place to learn about the sport, if nothing else. But yeah, quickly, just to recap my best bets here, we got Bashi, by KO or sub, Ribovics, win and over 1.5. Rebecki versus Duncan, under 2.5. Taira KO or sub. Heath asking the best value. I mean, there's different ways to do this. I think point per dollar for me, it's actually going to be Silva. Um, yeah, he's getting some love, maybe not as much as he should. I think, yeah, it's probably Silva for me. In terms of upside, maybe it's Gore, but I do think Vieira probably gets it done. So depends on your risk tolerance. I think there are ways to build where you're safer this week. But yeah, as a 12 fight card, you got to take some risks, in my opinion. Oh, okay. Heath is saying occupies the best value. Definitely appreciate you, Heath. But hey, extended the video with a little bit of info there. So yeah, I got the best bets up. Let me run through my picks real quick. If you guys follow me on Twitter at McMorrow DFS, there will be an article out tomorrow that I'll retweet that has my write ups on every fight. But yeah, we got in the opener. This is not the correct order, but doesn't really matter. Bashi against Yannis. I think Bashi gets it done probably via second round submission. Souza against Rodriguez. Rodriguez by decision. Estevam versus Bunes. I'm thinking Estevam by decision in all likelihood. Could see him winning by KO though, especially if he can get it done early. Gore against Vieira. I kind of like Vieira by submission. Can't say I'm confident at all in that one. Nakamura by decision. Pulyaev by KO. Vallejos by decision. I think that fight plays out closer than maybe the line suggests. I do like Dos Santos by decision, but Magny, one of the better underdogs on the card. I like Rosa if she shows up. by decision to get that one done. Ribovics by KO after a tricky first round against Brener, who's probably going to be grappling. Rebecki over Duncan, probably by late round finish. Could see that one going the distance. I'll say round 3 KO. And then I think Taira is able to find Park's back in the first 3 rounds. So we'll say Park by round 3 submission. Once again, appreciate you guys. Comment below. Again, help us with that algorithm. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Sign up to Occupy today. Yeah, let's have some fun this week. Big bounce back week after a tricky one last time. Some really fun spots. Should be a lot of violence. Again, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this card, this slate locks. But I appreciate you all. Have a great weekend. Take care. Good luck.